Thank you very much for joining, everyone. I am Tatiana. I am a registered associate nutritionist and working in the ESS Nutrition and Wellbeing team. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about how does stress affect our health, and then some of the things that we can maybe do to help cope and deal with our stress. So what is stress? What are the symptoms? We're going to go into what the stress hormones are, if it's a mental health problem, can stress be a good thing? What can happen if we have a lot of stress over a long period of time? And then how we can cope with stress, so the do's and don'ts, and then having a think about diet, exercise, sleep, and other supports. So I think most of us have found ourselves saying, I'm stressed, at least once or twice each week. But in a recent survey by the Mental Health Foundation, almost 3/4 of people asked felt so stressed that they were overwhelmed and unable to cope. As well as this, about half of the respondents had changed their eating habits due to stress. And then some even turned to drinking and smoking to cope. As well as this, about half of people also felt depressed, and about 61% also felt anxious. So it's often found that people who feel stressed are more prone to mental health conditions, including depression and anxiety. So what is stress? Well, stress is something we can all feel sometimes. Stressful situations are just part of life, but it's actually our body's reaction to feeling threatened or under pressure. It can present itself in different forms and cause a range of symptoms. So short-term stress is also known as the fight or flight response. Now, this is a survival mechanism from our hunter-gatherer days, and I'll go into this in a bit more detail in the following slides. Sometimes this can be positive and it can be beneficial, making us more motivated at work or work better under pressure. It can help us balance our work life, our home life, and that kind of thing. If we're continually stressed, it can lead to a number of health issues, both physically and mentally. So what makes us stressed? Well, there's loads of different factors that can have an impact. So money, life events, life changes, going away. And these feelings of stress are normally triggered by things happening in your life, which involve being under pressure or facing big changes, or if you're really worried about something, or having responsibilities that you find overwhelming. And over time, these feelings can build up and spiral into something much bigger. So is stress a mental health problem? Well, stress can cause mental health problems, and the constant struggle with stress might lead to anxiety or depression. But as well as this, mental health problems can cause stress. So coping with symptoms of mental health problems can create more stress. And this just goes into a negative spiral and a vicious cycle, which can be broken if we know how to manage and deal with our stress. But it's also really important that we can recognise and identify what is causing the stress. So the stress response, what hormones are involved? So as I mentioned previously, stress is also known as the fight or flight response. Now this goes back to our hunter-gatherer days, where during a potentially dangerous or threatening situation, our body would be activating our sympathetic nervous system and release stress hormones, which give us a rush of energy to either fight or run away. So when we encounter stress, our hypothalamus, which is this tiny section in our brain, sets off like an alarm system in our body. And this makes our bodies send signals to our adrenal glands, which are located just at the top of our kidneys, and they release a surge of hormones. Now, there are 3 main stress hormones. So our first is adrenaline. Now, this is our immediate reaction to stress, and it basically increases our heart rate, increases our blood pressure, and boosts our energy supplies to give us that energy to either fight or run away from the stressful situation. Our next one is norepinephrine, and this is also very similar to adrenaline, and it affects our blood pressure and directs our blood to our muscles so they'll be able to work and run away from the situation. And then our third is cortisol. So cortisol takes a bit longer to feel the effects, but cortisol increases the sugars and the glucose in our bloodstream and makes it ready available for our brain and muscles to use. As well as this, cortisol also stops bodily processes that aren't essential in a fight or flight situation. So, for example, things like our immune system, our digestive system, the reproductive system, and other growth processes. So this can have actually a longer term effect and impact, as well as maybe controlling our mood, our motivation, and our fear. So, what are the symptoms of stress? Well, the hormonal changes can lead to physical, mental, and behavioural changes, with some effects being immediate or some being longer term. So, physical symptoms could be things like headaches or chest pain. Mental could be difficulty concentrating, feelings of being overwhelmed or worried. And behavioural could be feeling irritable and snappy, not eating enough or eating too little, or increasing our reliance on smoking or drinking. But is stress always bad? Well, short-term stress can actually be beneficial. So this is because it can help us in challenging situations. It gives us that surge of energy for our fight or flight response. It can increase our concentration and may even improve our memory and immune function. And then usually after the stressful situation passes, our hormone levels will go back to normal and we'll feel calm and at ease. But if we're continually stressed over a long period of time and our stress hormones are elevated, it can be much more harmful. So long-term stress is often called burnout. And this is where our stress hormones are continually produced, so they're continually elevated. And as I've mentioned before, this can cause longer-term health problems, potentially weaken our immune system, and cause us to lean on more unhelpful coping mechanisms, such as smoking, drugs, or alcohol. Now, the stress hormones can affect different parts of our bodies and the different systems that we have. So our musculoskeletal system. So this is our bones, our skeleton, our muscles, and our joints that support our body. And short term, this can create muscle tension. But when the stress is gone, this is released. But long term, this can develop into headaches, migraines, and chronic pains. Then we have our respiratory system. So this is our airways and our lungs. So short term, this can affect our breathing, but potentially long term, this could develop into asthma. Then we've got our gastrointestinal system, so our digestive system. And short term, this can create butterflies or maybe a feeling of nausea, but longer term, this can have more of an impact on digestive issues and eating habits. Then we've got our cardiovascular system, so our heart and blood vessels. So short term, our heart beats faster, our blood pressure changes, but longer term, this can increase our risk of heart attacks and stroke. So what other health problems are there? Well, there are loads of different things that are associated with stress, and these can also lead into a cycle, leading to further stress and more health issues. So cardiovascular disease, change in weight, digestive issues, depression and anxiety, weakened immune system, and menstrual problems. So there's loads of different problems that stress can be linked to. So why do we get these long-term problems from our stress? Well, usually after we've been in a stressful situation, our hormones return back to normal, our heart rate and blood pressure returns back to baseline, and other systems resume. But if the stresses are always present or you constantly feel stressed, our fight or flight response stays turned on. So this can decrease our happy hormones. It can mean our non-essential bodily processes stop. Our gut-brain axis can be affected, and our stomach can feel like it's in knots, and this in turn can affect our digestion and cause things like IBS, bloating, and pain. So what can we do to relieve the symptoms of stress? So as I mentioned in the statistics at the start of this session, many people find themselves turning to drugs, alcohol, or smoking to cope with the symptoms of stress. And at the time, these might seem like a good idea, but they do only provide short-term relief and can be harmful to our health in the longer term. So alcohol is a popular one to turn to when we're stressed, but actually regular drinking can interfere with the chemicals in our brain that are vital for our good mental health. So alcohol is actually a depressant. So it can actually lead to more feelings of stress and anxiety. It can also weaken our immune system. So we should, if we're going to be drinking alcohol, aim to have no more than 14 units per week and spread our drinking over 3 or more days. So 14 units is about 6 pints of beer or 6 medium glasses of wine. And we shouldn't be using this as a coping mechanism. If we continually consume a lot of alcohol, then it can increase our risk of developing cancer, heart disease, or liver disease. So what can you do to manage and relieve the symptoms of our stress? Well, there are loads of different ways we can do this, and this can be really individual to us, but there are some general tips and advice that should help most of us. So one of the first things we can do to help our stress is to eat a healthy and balanced diet. So if you've listened to one of our webinars before, some of you might be familiar with the Eat Well guide. So the government uses the Eat Well guide to show the different types of foods and drinks we should consume over a day or a week, and in what proportions we need to eat them to ensure that we get the energy, nutrients, vitamins and minerals that we need to stay fit and healthy. So most of us know we should be having about 5 portions of fruit and vegetables each day, aiming to have a different variety and colours. We should base our meals on starchy carbohydrates, things like potatoes, bread, rice, pasta, choosing wholemeal brown versions where possible to boost up our fibre intake. We should be choosing lower fat and lower sugar dairy or dairy alternatives. We should include our protein from a variety of sources, so not just meat, but beans, pulses, fish and eggs too. And then for our fats and spreads, we should be choosing unsaturated oils and spreads. So often these are from plant-based sources and liquid at room temperature. And then as well as this, we should be decreasing our intake of foods high in saturated fat, sugar and salt. So why does this help? Well, eating properly will help us not eat too little or too much, and it ensures that we're fueling our bodies with enough energy and nutrients that we need. And if we're eating the right things, we can decrease our risk of diet-related diseases. It can help with our digestive health, which, as I've mentioned before, can be affected by stress. So the guide recommends lots of different foods, including fibre foods, which can also keep our gut healthy. Our food affects our mood, so we want to make sure that we're eating food that's making us feel good, but also giving us energy. And this will help us think clearly and deal with stressful situations. And then just as a little side note here, so caffeine can be included as part of a healthy and balanced diet. However, if we have too much, it can affect our sleep, increase our stress hormones, and this can lead to a negative cycle, which we mentioned earlier. So you just need to think about if caffeine does affect your sleeping, and if it does, can you cut back on it? So our next tip to help deal with and manage stress is being physically active. Now, being active is a really good way to manage and deal with the symptoms of stress. So exercise increases our feel-good, happy hormones, as well as being a great way to clear our heads. So we should be aiming to be active every day, but this doesn't mean we have to exercise every day. It just means increasing our movement. But it is recommended that we do 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per week. So this could be something like brisk walking, riding a bike, dancing, or we can do 75 minutes of vigorous exercise per week. So this would be something like running, swimming fast, team sports, something that really gets your heart rate up. As well as this, we need to be thinking about including muscle strengthening activities twice a week. So this is really important for our muscle strength, as well as to support our bone strength and density. This could be in the form of yoga, lifting weights, Pilates, and so on. Don't forget that all movement counts, so things like carrying your heavy shopping bags, taking the stairs instead of the lift, walking to work, gardening, rollerblading, and so on, all counts as movement. So why is exercise really important? Well, actually, exercise does increase cortisol, which is, as I've mentioned before, is a stress hormone. However, this is overridden by our feel-good, happy hormones, so our endorphins, and this increases our mood and gives us energy. It helps to clear our head by giving us something to focus on. It can increase our mood and self-esteem, decrease the risk of mental health problems. And then there's also research to suggest that doing our exercise outdoors can also further reduce our stress. So the next thing that's really important is to take some time out. So this is really key in helping you deal with stress. So can you set aside 30 minutes or an hour each day to do this? It can be anything that you enjoy just by taking some me time. So reading a book, having a bath, exercising. And this is really important to lower our stress hormones, lower our heart rate and decrease our blood pressure. You could even try mindfulness. So mindfulness is a technique that helps us tune into our thoughts and feelings and helps us deal with challenging or stressful situations. And this can be in the form of breathing techniques. So by focusing on your body and breathing, mindfulness can help you to notice your thoughts and feelings that come into your mind and then use these to understand what your body is telling you. There are some useful apps, things like Headspace and Calm, or even if you type into YouTube mindfulness, there are loads of resources out there if you want to give it a go. So our next thing we can do is get some sleep. So most of us aren't getting enough of this. If we're busy, it's usually bumped to the bottom of our priority list. So if we are stressed, our stress hormones can keep us awake, as well as affecting our sleep quality. And as I've mentioned before, this is a negative cycle. So we feel stressed, so we don't sleep. And because we don't sleep, we feel more stressed. So our sleep is really important. Most of us need about 7 to 9 hours each night. And this is a new area of research, but it may actually have additional health benefits. So it can keep our immune system strong, decrease our blood pressure, improve our attention span and our concentration. So if you're struggling to sleep, there are a few ways we can sleep a bit better. So getting into a routine is really important. So going to bed and waking up at the same time each night can help our body get into a routine and a rhythm and help us sleep better. We need to create a relaxing environment. So a nice dark room, a nice quiet space, a good temperature where you feel comfortable. Invest in an alarm clock. So try not to use your phone as an alarm and just use an alarm clock. Ditch your screen, so try not to go on your phone, your tablet, your laptop, maybe 1 to 2 hours before bed, as this is because they release a blue light, which can actually make our eyes feel a bit more awake. We can reduce our caffeine intake in the afternoon, do regular exercise, which will help us feel tired at the end of the day. We can try mindfulness or meditation to unwind, and we can prioritise our sleep. So we need to make sure that we are getting our 7 to 9 hours each night. So the final thing we can do to help with stress is to build your support network. So remember, whatever you're going through that's causing you stress, you don't need to cope with it alone. So friends and family are obviously really key. So sometimes just telling the people close to you how you're feeling can make a big difference. And they might actually be able to help you out in other ways too. There's support at work. So speak to your line manager, HR department, the employee assistance programme, or our newly trained mental health first aiders. And then you can have a chat with your colleagues or peers. There are also really great resources available. So some of the best are the Mind Charity website or the NHS website. As well as this, if you feel like you need professional support or your stress is affecting your daily life, or you're worried you could be leading into more mental health issues, your GP is a really good person to speak to. So there are other few tips which can help you deal with managing stress, but as I've mentioned before, it's about finding what works for you and what makes you feel less stressed. So in summary, many of us do feel stressed, but at times it's important to recognise when it's becoming too much. The long-term health implications of stress can be harmful, so we should seek help early on. And we need to continue to practice reducing stress, even if you don't actively feel stressed. So just a few other things to look out for. We do have our Health and Wellbeing Board. So this provides us with information and support to improve your overall health and wellbeing. We've got our Wellness Wednesdays, so our webinars, our live Instagram Q&A. We are also on social media, so YouTube, TikTok and Instagram. Just search for We Are ESS. And then we have our monthly wellness newsletter, our Healthier Mind mental health newsletter, and our Toolbox Talk. So if you'd like any of these resources sent directly to your inbox, just drop us an email at ess.wellness@compass-group.co.uk. Just as a little reminder, next week is Mental Health Awareness Week. So we have got a few challenges and information going on. So look out for this in the wellness newsletter. We'll also be posting on Workplace and Instagram. We've got an extra webinar on food, mood and mindful eating. And then we've also got a live Instagram mindfulness session with Evan Judge on Thursday. So make sure you look out for those. We are always here to answer your nutrition and wellbeing queries. Just drop us an email at ess.wellness@compass-group.co.uk. We also have mental health first aid specialists, so please do get in touch with them if you are feeling that you are struggling with any mental health issues. So thank you very much for tuning in and listening today. If you've got any questions, anything related to today's webinar or anything else, again, please just send us an email. Thank you very much for your time and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.